Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Global number of COVID-19 infections has crossed 60 million with more than 1.4 million deaths. India's death tally has exceeded 135,000 with 524 new deaths and over 44,000 cases since yesterday. Pakistan has registered over 3,300 infections and 40 deaths in the past 24 hours, taking its death toll to 7,843. Meanwhile, Sudan's former Prime Minister Sadiq al-Mahdi has died of the COVID-19 in the UAE. US President Donald Trump has granted a pardon to his former national security advisor Michael Flynn. Flynn had twice pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI during an investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 US election. In a tweet, Trump congratulated Flynn and his family, calling the announcement his great honor. Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has termed the act as grave corruption and abuse of power. Azerbaijan has rejected a French proposal to recognize independence of the Nagorno-Karabakh region. In a statement, the Azeri Foreign Ministry says the French Senate's resolution is completely biased and provocative. Earlier this month, Armenia, Azerbaijan and Russia signed a deal to end 6 weeks of fierce fighting in Nagorno-Karabakh. Russia has tested a new missile that acts as a defense system against ballistic missile attacks. The missile was launched from the Sari-Shagan fighting range in Kazakhstan. Russian Missile Defense Army says the new missile reliably confirmed its characteristics in a series of tests. Tributes are pouring in from around the football world after the tragic death of one of the greatest players, Diego Maradona. Brazil football great Pelé, Barcelona captain Lionel Messi and Portuguese star Cristiano Ronaldo paid rich tributes. The Argentina icon passed away aged 60 after suffering a cardiac arrest at his home. The state funeral for Maradona will be held at official residence of Argentina's president, who has declared a 3-day national mourning. Those are the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now to the news in detail. Global number of COVID-19 infections has crossed 60 million with more than 1.4 million deaths. India's death tally has exceeded 135,000 with 524 new deaths and over 44,000 cases since yesterday. Meanwhile, Sudan's former Prime Minister Sadiq al-Mahdi has died of coronavirus in the UAE. More in this report.
The holiday season is already proving to be a super spreading factor as the COVID-19 surge skyrockets across the world. The latest spike in the Americas alone has infected over 1.5 million people over the past 7 days. Canada imposed curbs in another province, Saskatchewan, aimed to restrict capacities of many public places to slow the spread of COVID-19. Down south, Brazil has reported nearly 50,000 new cases and 654 deaths overnight, pushing the toll over 170,000. While Mexico City has launched a new test and trace approach amid rising cases.
Lockdown's effectiveness has not been fully demonstrated. Many times they are carried out to exalt the authoritarian attitude of an official. You have to trust the people, convince citizens instead of imposing. That too not by force. Because authority tends to feel arrogant. It wants to limit the freedoms of citizens, thinking that the citizens are minor.
The World Health Organization's data shows that Europe has been the biggest global contributor to new cases and deaths in the last week. Meanwhile, Turkey has signed a contract to buy 50 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine from China's Sinovac Biotech. France also reported fresh surge in COVID infections and deaths as it registered 380 deaths and over 16,000 new cases overnight. Struggling to contain the pandemic, Germany has extended restrictive measures until at least December 20th.
Daily infection numbers remain at a level that is far too high. Enormous efforts are being made in some of ICUs. Reports from Robert Koch Institute for Infectious Diseases that 410 people died of COVID-19 in the past 24 hours reminds us in the saddest of ways that there are human tragedies behind the statistics, lives which sometimes end much too soon.
Elsewhere, South Korea has reported its biggest cases spike since March. The country continues to grapple with the third wave, forcing it to reimpose tougher restrictions.
In Pakistan, 40 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours, raising the death toll to 7,843. The Health Ministry says over 3,300 tested positive for the disease overnight. The ministry said there are more than 43,000 active COVID-19 cases in the country. It said out of nearly 386,000 countrywide cases, almost 334,000 have recovered so far. The ministry said over 167,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, while Punjab has reported over 116,000 cases so far. In the capital Islamabad, more than 28,000 have been infected so far. A Transparency International report has ranked India as the most corrupt country in Asia. It says India has the highest rates of bribery and people who use personal connections to get public services. The survey report finds that 3/4 of the respondents believe government corruption is a big problem in the country. India was followed by Cambodia and Indonesia. US President Donald Trump has granted a pardon to his former national security advisor, Michael Flynn. Flynn had twice pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI during an investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 US election. In a tweet, Trump congratulated Flynn and his family, calling the announcement his great honor. In a statement, the White House said the pardon will end harsh victimization of an innocent individual. Flynn responded by posting a tweet carrying US flag emoji and a verse from the Bible. The move marks the highest profile pardon Trump has granted since taking the Oval Office. Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has termed the act as grave corruption and abuse of power. Azerbaijan has rejected a French proposal to recognize independence of Nagorno-Karabakh region. In a statement, the Azeri Foreign Ministry says the French Senate's resolution is completely biased and provocative. It said the French Senate should do activities that facilitate peace, stability and progress in the region rather than disputes. Yesterday, the French Senate passed a resolution calling for the recognition of the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic. While earlier this month, Armenia, Azerbaijan and Russia signed a deal to end 6 weeks of fierce fighting in Nagorno-Karabakh. Israeli forces have shot dead a Palestinian man near a checkpost in East Jerusalem. The civilian was shot during the security check. Palestinian officials say the man was taken to a nearby hospital after being shot at, but he couldn't survive. Human rights groups have repeatedly slammed Israeli forces for using excessive force against innocent Palestinians. Earlier, 24 Palestinians were wounded as Israeli army soldiers fired rubber bullets at protesters in a bid to disperse them in the Jordan Valley. Israel has also demolished a number of Palestinian structures in the valley. Almost 800 Palestinians, including 400 minors, have already lost their homes in 2020. The UN says Israel's prolonged closure and military operations in Palestine has left Gaza's economy on the verge of collapse. A recent UN report says Israel's occupation cost Gaza's economy $16.7 billion. The report, titled "Economic Costs of the Israeli Occupation for the Palestinian People," estimates the cost to be 6 times Gaza's GDP in 2018. It says Israel's annexation and siege have pushed more than 1 million Palestinians below the poverty line in just 10 years. The report stressed the urgent need to end closure of Gaza so that its people can freely trade with the rest of the world. Since June 2007, 2 million Palestinians have been under a prolonged closure inside the 365 square kilometer area of the Gaza Strip. US Special Envoy for Iran says Washington is set to impose sanctions on 4 entities linked to Tehran's missile program. Speaking during a virtual event, Elliot Abrams warned that the US will hit Iran with more curbs over the coming months under the Trump administration. The envoy says it will take months before President-elect Joe Biden's administration can return to talks regarding the Iran nuclear deal. Abrams added it will be unwise to assume that the new administration can reverse Iran policy like switching a light. On his campaign trail, Biden said he will return the US to the nuclear deal if Iran resumes compliance. Tensions between Washington and Tehran have risen since US President Donald Trump abandoned the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Iran has released a jailed British-Australian academic Kelly Moore Gilbert in a prisoner swap. Tehran exchanged jailed Gilbert with 3 Iranians jailed abroad. Iranian media says Gilbert was set free in exchange for 3 Iranian nationals. In a statement, Australia's Foreign Minister Marise-Anne Payne said Gilbert's release was achieved through diplomatic engagement with Iran. Payne said Gilbert's release has been an absolute priority for Canberra since her detention. After her release, Gilbert thanked her supporters for the diplomatic efforts to secure her freedom. Iran detained Gilbert on the charges of spying for Zionist powers and gave her a 10-year sentence in 2018. The US has unilaterally blacklisted Libya's Qaniyat militia and its leader over human rights abuses by the group. Last week, Russia vetoed a UN Security Council resolution calling for sanctions on the Qaniyat group. In a statement, US Treasury Department said Qaniyat group is responsible for the murder of civilians. It said the militia is also responsible for torture, forced disappearances and displacement of civilians. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said the sanctions have been imposed under the Global Magnitsky Act, which allows the US to target human rights violators worldwide. Russia has called on the UN to analyze the damages done by the US and EU's unilateral sanctions imposed on various countries. In a Security Council meeting, Moscow's permanent representative to the UN, Vasily Nebenzia, said the imposed sanctions have bypassed the UN Security Council and the unilateral curbs are illegal. Nebenzia said the restrictive measures have posed serious threats to international peace and security. He said it has weakened the humanitarian situation in the Middle East, Africa, Latin America, and some European regions. He added Russia may involve UN regional coordinators to monitor impacts of sanctions on economic revival of countries after the pandemic. The foreign ministers of Russia and Iraq have discussed bilateral military cooperation. In a news conference, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Iraq's defense minister will visit Moscow in the near future. He said the details of the new arms sales with Baghdad will be discussed during that visit of the Iraqi defense minister. Lavrov said Russia has a crucial role in equipping Iraq with weapons, including for the fight against terrorism. He added that Russian companies have invested over $13 billion in Iraq's economy. Meanwhile, Iraqi Foreign Minister Fuad Hussein said the two countries will sign 14 bilateral documents covering various areas of cooperation. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The US has granted a 7-day extension to ByteDance to sell TikTok's American business. TikTok's court filing shows the new deadline will be the 4th of December. A US Treasury spokesperson said the extension will allow time to review a revised submission by the company. ByteDance made a new proposal to address the Trump administration's concerns. Earlier on November the 13th, the US announced a 15-day extension for ByteDance to reach a deal with buyers. The Chinese firm has been in talks with Oracle Corporation and Walmart to set up a new entity. TikTok Global, Washington's several attempts to enforce restrictions on Chinese short video sharing app have been blocked by US courts so far. Chinese President Xi Jinping has congratulated US President-elect Joe Biden on his election victory. In his telegram, Xi said both countries must stick to no confrontation, mutual respect and the spirit of win-win cooperation. State media quoted Xi Jinping as saying the two countries should promote world peace and development. He said healthy and stable development of the US-China relations will benefit both the countries. Chinese Vice President Wang Qishan also extended a congratulatory message to Kamala Harris on her election victory. Xi's message came more than 2 weeks after several other countries had already congratulated Biden. China and South Korea pledged to work together to advance bilateral ties and tackle regional and global issues. At the meeting, China's top diplomat Wang Yi said he discussed North Korea and the pandemic with his Korean counterpart. Wang said his visit was to highlight the importance of bilateral relations as the two countries cooperate as strategic partners. He said the COVID-19 crisis could not defeat the citizens of the two countries. South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-woo thanked Wang for the visit and hoped to exchange views to deepen cooperation. Wang's trip comes as the two countries discuss the possibility of the Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Seoul. Xi's visit had been expected early this year but was postponed as the pandemic disrupted the diplomatic calendar. In Brazil, at least 40 people have died after a crash between a bus and a truck in the southeastern state of São Paulo. Local media said the accident took place near the city of Tanguay, roughly 350 kilometers west from the state capital, São Paulo. The fire service said 37 people died at the scene, with 3 more in the hospital. It was not immediately clear how many people are injured. State police said an investigation has been launched to find out the cause of the accident. Cyclone Neva has made landfall in southern India, triggering torrential downpours in coastal areas of Tamil Nadu. Officials said it reached winds of more than 120 kilometers per hour, but then weakened into a severe cyclonic storm. Tens of thousands of people from low-lying areas had been evacuated ahead of the landfall. Local media says one woman died when a wall collapsed following rains. Heavy wind has already felled trees and strong rains flooded parts of Tamil Nadu and the capital Chennai. India's Met agency says Neva has begun to weaken to a low depression as it moves north. As Germans try to bear out the coronavirus pandemic as best they can, a humorous take on the restrictions is providing passers-by in Frankfurt with some festive cheer. A restaurant is serving a packed room of panda bears. More in this report.
It is not every day a restaurant finds itself serving a packed room of panda bears, especially ones who are partial to a cold corona or two. Giuseppe Fischra, the owner of a Frankfurt restaurant, is staging a protest against the coronavirus lockdown in Germany. He has filled his tables with 100 stuffed toy pandas in a play on the word pandemic.
Ja, wir wollten das Lokal mit Leben füllen.
We wanted to put some life back into our restaurant. We thought of teddy bears, but the teddy bears became panda bears because panda and pandemic, and so they are pandemic pandas.
German officials have agreed to extend the lockdown until December 20th, imposed on November 2nd. It means bars, restaurants and entertainment venues must stay closed while shops and schools can remain open. But in the Pinot, the pandas are seated at the restaurant's tables and propped up at the bar.
Das ist ein stiller Protest, ein Angebot an unsere
It is a silent protest, an offer to our guests, and we will keep it lit for 24 hours as long as there is a lockdown. So our guests, our potential guests, can see this and enjoy it around the clock.
German government has said it will extend financial aid for firms hit by the restrictions. Experts say the aid can go up to 20 billion euros in December to an estimated 10 to 15 billion euros bill in November.
Japanese trendsetters can now protect against the coronavirus in luxurious style with opulent masks. The lavish masks are adorned with diamond and pearls for a cool $1,000,000 each. More in this report.
As wearing a face mask has become essential in the coronavirus era, a casual wear store in Japan presents luxury masks. A diamond mask is embellished with a 0.7 carat diamond and more than 300 pieces of Swarovski crystal, while the pearl mask contains some 330 Japanese Akoya pearls. Some visitors to the store were concerned the $1,000,000 masks might be out of their league.
If I wear one of these face masks, I have to wear suitable clothes to match it, so I think it is a bit embarrassing to dress up. I am concerned about the price. It is a little bit expensive and it is concerning, so I cannot buy it easily.
The luxurious masks have not been purchased yet, but they are still far from the world's most expensive. That honor belongs to a $1.5 million mask made with 250 grams of 18-karat gold, designed by Israeli jeweler UL.
Although no one has bought them, yet we have had customers reacting and saying such things as beautiful or amazing. So we hope this can cheer up those who see it.
Oxco's mask.com chain began selling the handmade masks last week with the aim of cheering up people and to spur sales in a fashion industry depressed by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Stocks in Asia Pacific have mostly edged up as investors react cautiously to US Federal Reserve's meeting overnight. Japan's Nikkei 225 is leading the gains, adding nearly 1%, while the Topix index gained as well. Mainland Chinese shares and Hong Kong's Hang Seng index are trading just above the flat line. Seoul's Kospi also added over 0.5%, but the shares in Australia bucked the trend as the ASX 200 has so far shed over 0.5%. The UK economy is expected to shrink by 11.3% this year and not return to its pre-crisis size until the end of 2022. Speaking in the Parliament, Finance Minister Rishi Sunak said the economic emergency due to COVID-19 has just begun. He added that the pandemic will leave lasting damage to growth and jobs. Sunak said government borrowing will rise to its highest level outside of wartime to deal with the economic impact. He said the public sector workers will face a pay freeze, excluding the employees of National Health Service. Official forecasts now predict the biggest economic decline for the UK in 300 years. Tributes are pouring in from around the football world after the tragic death of one of the greatest players, Diego Maradona. The Argentine icon passed away aged 60 after suffering a cardiac arrest at his home. He was battling health issues and underwent a brain surgery 2 weeks ago. More about the football great in this report.
Maradona captained Argentina when his side won the 1986 World Cup, scoring the famous Hand of God goal against England in the quarterfinals. The attacking midfielder played for Barcelona and Napoli during his club career, winning 2 Serie A titles with the Italian side. He scored 34 goals in 91 appearances for Argentina, representing them in 4 World Cups. Maradona led his country to the 1990 final in Italy, where they were beaten by West Germany, before captaining them again in the US in 1994. Despite widespread fame and success, his career was not without its fair share of controversies. During the second half of his career, he struggled with drug addiction and was banned for 15 months in 1991. He retired from professional football in 1997 at the age of 37. Following his death, Argentina's President Alberto Fernandez has declared 3 days of national mourning. The state funeral for Maradona will be held at official residence of Argentina's president. In Buenos Aires, people began pouring onto the streets to mourn the nation's favorite son. Football players and fans have also paid tribute to Maradona. Brazil football great Pelé said the world has lost a legend and one day he hoped to play with Maradona in heaven. Barcelona captain Lionel Messi called it a very sad day for all Argentinians and for football. Portuguese star Cristiano Ronaldo said the world was farewelling an eternal genius and an unparalleled magician who was departing too early. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro described Maradona's death as heartbreaking. Meanwhile, the Japanese government said Maradona's death was too early.
In the UEFA Champions League, Real Madrid have claimed their first ever win at the San Siro, beating Inter Milan 2-0 in the Group B encounter. Eden Hazard converted an early penalty, while a second-half own goal from Ashraf Hakimi sealed 3 points for the Spaniards. The win moves Real up into second place in the group with only 1 point behind leaders Borussia Mönchengladbach. Earlier, Gladbach cruised to a 4-0 victory over Shakhtar Donetsk to stay on the top of the group. In another fixture, Atalanta scored twice in 4 minutes to upset Liverpool 2-0. Defending champions Bayern Munich booked their place in the knockout stage with a 3-1 victory over Red Bull Salzburg. 6 members of the Pakistan cricket team have tested positive for the coronavirus in Christchurch, New Zealand. The New Zealand Cricket Board said the players have been isolated and the team's exemption to train in quarantine has been revoked. All members of the Pakistan cricket team had returned negative results on 4 occasions before leaving Lahore. New Zealand will host Pakistan for a 3-match T20 series along with the 2 test matches. The first T20 is slated for the 18th of December at Auckland, while the last test will be played at Christchurch on 3rd of January. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.